Hello and welcome back to another episode of Avenicast. Here with me today, I'm excited to introduce Ben Fowke, Executive Chairman of Xcel Energy. Ben, thanks so much for joining the program.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, the Executive Chairman, Xcel Energy, it's a pretty big deal. So I imagine you've got some stories from throughout your career, but as we focus here on sort of the First Job podcast, we're really most interested and focused on, right around the time when you were in school, going to college, right after, all those sort of formative years. What would you point to as the pivotal things that really contributed to your success in your career?
Well, I think, the ability to really manage time. And if you do that well, I think you can accomplish a lot more than perhaps you think going into it. It's amazing how much time we waste in a day just doing things that aren't that important. So, when I was in college, I don't think you can do it today, but I was able to put myself through college by working. And I had a great job at night at UPS unloading trucks. And this is in the late 70s, Scott. And I think I was making about $14 an hour, which is probably like $50 an hour equivalent.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And on top of that, in the spring and summer, I had my own construction company. I used to build above ground swimming pools in the Baltimore, Maryland area. And
cool.
So I was making a lot of money in college and getting good grades in college and finding time to go out and, have fun too. But it was a very busy time. And when I got out of college with a degree in accounting and finance, I went to work for it's now called KPMG. It's an accounting firm,
sure.
One of the big ones. But it was really an eye-opener for me because literally now I'd gotten married in my last year of college, had a son, and now I'm starting my career, which I was excited about, but I had to take a big pay cut. So that was a real struggle for me. And it really, again, it motivated me to pass the CPA exam, which, made you eligible for a bonus. And I also knew would open up other career opportunities for me. So again, even though I had a new job, I was a father and, studying for the CPA exam, I think I managed to do all those things. I was fortunate enough that I did pass it on the first try. And sure enough, offers did come in and I took some offers that moved me along in my career. So, I guess the lesson is that, if you really put your mind to it, manage your time well and focus on the important things, you can get a lot of work done. And that's a lesson I've kept my entire career.
I love that. I talk about that a lot myself, just in terms of, we're all given the same number of hours each week, but how we decide to spend them varies considerably between person to person, right? And if you're strategic about your time, there's actually a lot more time than a lot of people think. So I completely agree. But going back, go ahead.
If you do more things, you get more done. I mean, because totally. You're forced to manage your time. And, when you're idle, you fill up your time with idle things.
Yeah. If you want something done, give it to someone who's busy, right? That's, yep. So, when you were in school, to your point, accounting and finance, that's no cakewalk of a degree, right? That's got some rigor there and some difficulty and some challenge. But then also you've got your own business, you're building above ground swimming pools, so you're enterprising. But then also doing, the work at UPS, which is backbreaking work. I've seen it up close personally, and know that it's tough work. It's physically exhausting work, and when you're doing that kind of work, you need to sleep and recover. I guess when you think about the key approaches that you took when you were kind of managing your time. I mean, there wasn't much of it, right? In terms of sort of that idle time, but how did you kind of develop in your mind, like, a framework for how to do that? Where did that thought process come from?
Well, I didn't wait to the last minute to do things. I wouldn't have the luxury that, of cramming. So I wasn't a crammer. I knew this is what had to be done. I will tell you, in all honesty, in the spring, I made sure I took some classes where attendance wasn't required.
Sure,
so
sure.
I still have dreams of not showing up for the test at the end of the semester.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
But I would would make sure I got a couple classes like that to help lighten the load, and I'd work on a Tuesday and Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so I could do the pools on the weekend as off days. And I think it's just knowing, okay, this is what it's going to take. If I do 1 hour a day on this particular task, by the end of the 2 months, it's all going to be done. So you really have to parcel it out and be careful with how you allocate your time, because you just can't wait till the last minute. So it wouldn't be the kind of thing a procrastinator would be able to take on. I mean, in all honesty. So, plan, allocate wisely, and look, it's not all I did is, work and study. I mean, I mentioned I got married, so I had to be doing something.
Yeah. It does take a little bit of time. I've got 4 kids myself, so I understand, being a parent is takes some time as well, right? There's certainly takes some time, or at least should. So I guess, when you think about, I agree with your point about procrastination. I think in some ways, procrastination is sort of like I don't know if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's like, if you have the time to procrastinate, you will procrastinate. So kind of eliminating the risk of doing that by being busy enough that you don't have that, or at least being intentional enough. Because it sounds like, because you made the point of saying, like, you still had time to go out and enjoy yourself and have relationships and things. Like, is it just really, does it come down to being very intentional and like planful and being willing to make some choices and put together a plan? Is that where some people you think go wrong? Is that they're just not willing to like put a plan in place?
Yeah, you got to prioritize. It's been a long time now, but if I recall, I did watch a heck of a lot of TV back then.
Sure.
And there was no Facebook or social media to worry about, so I didn't worry about that either. So, so as a result, if you cut out, look, I enjoy watching TV, but if on those scale of priorities, that one can go, and there's things like that too, that I think you can, it's your own personal choices, but you can't do everything. So pick the things that you really think are important to do and do them well, and put purpose behind it and commitment behind it. And again, to my earlier point, I think you can do a lot more if you really organize and prioritize and keep your eye on the prize, so to speak.
Yeah. So, another thing that you said that I think was interesting is, and it's sort of been a theme in some of the other episodes that we've had, where, your degree was in accounting and finance, right? But I'm really intrigued by this construction company, this pool company that you were also running, because, anyone that knows anything about running a company knows that there is an element of sales and marketing and putting yourself out there, right? Which a lot of the accounting and finance folks that I know, and I know many, they're not necessarily the most extroverted. They're not necessarily always that interested in kind of putting themselves out there. So is that something that came natural to you? Is that part of who you are, or was that something you had to sort of work at and force?
I'm not an introvert, but I'm not really a natural extrovert either. So somewhere in the middle, I think, is where I am. But the sales and the business side of that, some of that took care of itself, because I secured contracts with the vendors that sold the pools. So that was where the selling was. Going down and getting a contract, and then getting the necessary equipment, and then getting the people to work for you and with you. Those are things that took my time. And then it was also, this is where accounting and finance came in. It was also about making sure you priced your product appropriately. Where some pools are obviously a lot more difficult than others, and if you misprice it, you're all of a sudden you're working for free. So I think I did a pretty good job of that. The experience I had was I was building pools with some people that I knew, and eventually I decided, hey, you know what, I can do this too. So that's where the initiative comes in. And, again, it was for a spring, summer job. It really helped me pay the bills. And again, I don't think you can do this today, but I graduated college without any student debt, which was, and that's was
something.
Of course, I think inflation has outpaced
a little bit.
The cost of an education it's really severe. So, but
yeah. Well, so I guess, if you think back and maybe, maybe in two parts, this question can come through is, first of all, was there anyone that gave you really great advice or really kind of gave you, some strong recommendations on like how you should be doing some of these things? Did you have an example, a mentor, something like that? And then similarly, like if you could go back in time, if you could, hop in a DeLorean, let's say, and go back in time and sort of speak to yourself back in college, what would you tell yourself? Would you tell yourself to change the way you did any of it? Would you tell yourself to just stick with it? It's all going to work out. I mean, what would be the message?
Well, I didn't have a classic mentor, and so I think the kind of work your company does is great. And if I could go back in time, I think I would have been more had more purpose in finding a mentor, and not being shy to ask people to show me the way, because I learned a lot of things the hard way, quite honestly. And I think going back, there could have been an easier way to do some of those things. That's the bad news. The good news is I did figure it out. And sometimes that kind of figuring things out for yourself helps with when you get more complex problems to solve down the road. So there's good and bad about it, but there's a few things in my career. I mentioned that very first job, Scott. When I passed the CPA exam, I did take another offer pretty quickly. And in hindsight, I mean, it all worked out for me, so I wouldn't change anything. But I think I jumped too quick on that first job. I probably should have got more experience in a public accounting arena before I jumped. But again, a lot of money pressures, and at that time, a few $1,000s more a year was a lot to me.
At any time, that makes a difference, right? I think that's important. I guess thinking about a company as big and diverse as Xcel, right? Mm-hmm. It's interesting, I guess, because you think about most people that have done the kind of job that you've done. There's your story is pretty unique, right? You've got almost this like blue collar mentality in terms of like how you got through school, how you figured things out, how you and I'm sure that stayed with you much of your career. But do you think that made you a better leader too? Like better able to kind of connect with folks that are linemen and doing different kinds of jobs that may not be in the may not be behind a computer or may not be in the executive suite somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely think it helps. I mean, half of our workforce at Xcel Energy is bargained in a union, and so it's helpful to say, "Hey, I was in the Teamsters."
Yeah, the UPS.
So that's helpful. But I think the kind of that modest background. I mean, you just integrate it with a lot of different people, and so I got to know all kinds of different people, and and relating to people from a lot of different perspectives, and that's really an ability that everybody should court. I mean, you've got to really understand the people on the other side of the table who you're talking to, and be willing to listen and absorb and play it back to them so that they know you actually heard it. And I'm not saying you can't do that with an Ivy League education. You certainly can, but the fact that all through my life I was around all kinds of different people, rich, poor, black, white, all different backgrounds. It's been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just there's something to be said for doing the work and knowing what the return is, right? Like it's I've used to joke in college when you could tell the people that were paying for their own education because they just seemed to care a little bit more, right?
Like I sat in the front row.
yeah. A B wasn't going to cut it, right? Like you were paying, you want to make sure you walked out of there with that A, right? And that's important.
Not kidding.